Rhode and Glossier are two of the most talked about beauty brands of the last decade. They look almost identical on the surface. Same aesthetic, minimalist packaging, same skin-first positioning, same Gen Z audience. But if you work in brand management or you are trying to understand how beauty brands actually get built, the surface is the least interesting part. Because underneath the shared aesthetic, these two brands are built on completely different strategic foundations. And those foundations explain everything. Why one scaled faster, why one stumbled publicly, and what both of them reveal about the choices every brand manager has to make. This video is a full brand manager's dissection of both. We are going through the strategy, the data, the cracks, and the framework you can apply to any brand you work on. If you work on brand management, brand strategy, or marketing, this is for you. If you are trying to break into the beauty industry and you want to understand how brands' decisions actually get made, this is also for you. We are not talking about whether these products work. We are not talking about which one to buy. We are talking about what's actually happening strategically and why it matters for anyone who builds brand for a living. Let's get into it. Before we look at either brand individually, I want to give you the lens we are going to use for the whole video. There is one question that sits underneath every brand strategy decision. Pricing, distribution, communication, product development, all of it. And that question is, what is the brand actually selling? Not the product, not the ingredient list, not the category. The thing underneath the product, the feeling, the identity that someone is buying into when they choose this brand over another. Glossier and Rhode give two completely different answers to that question. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Glossier sold belonging, Rhode sold a ritual. That's the thesis. Now let's prove it. Glossier launched in 2014, but the brand didn't start in 2014. It started 4 years earlier. In 2010, with a blog called Into the Gloss, a beauty editorial site founded by Emily Weiss, where women talked openly about their routines, their products, and what they actually wanted from the beauty industry. By the time Glossier launched as a product brand, it already had 4 years of community intelligence. It knew exactly what its audience wanted, because its audience had been telling it in the comments section for years. That's not a small thing. Most brands build a product and then try to find an audience. Glossier built an audience and then designed a product around what that audience told them it needed. Multiple Glossier bestsellers came directly from community conversations on Into the Gloss. The brand's positioning, skin first, makeup second, Glossier always, was a philosophy, not a product claim. You weren't buying a moisturizer, you were joining a point of view about beauty. And that community became the distribution. Glossier didn't run traditional advertising at scale in its early years. It didn't need to. The growth engine, as Emily Weiss attributed, was approximately 70% of Glossier's sales to direct, organic and referral traffic, meaning the vast majority of their revenue came from people who already knew the brand or were sent there by someone who did, not paid advertising. By March 2019, Glossier raised a $100 million Series D led by Sequoia Capital and hit unicorn status with a $1.2 billion valuation. A beauty brand built primarily on community content had become one of the most valuable direct-to-consumer companies in the world. By July 2021, a Series E round led by Lone Pine Capital valued Glossier at $1.8 billion, the highest point the brand value reached. Then 2022 happened. And this is where the community model reveals its structural limitation. In January 2022, 6 months after raising $80 million at a $1.8 billion valuation, Glossier laid off more than 80 corporate employees, 1/3 of the entire company. CEO Emily Weiss sent a letter to the team saying the brand had, in her words, made some mistakes on its path to scale. In May 2022, Emily Weiss stepped down as CEO. In June 2022, Glossier announced price hikes, citing higher production and shipping costs. All of this happened within a single calendar year. Now, these things happen in business. Restructuring is not a death sentence, but here is why it matters specifically for Glossier. In a way, it might not matter for other brands. When your core strategic asset, the thing you are actually selling, is community and belonging, operational turbulence becomes brand turbulence. Every announcement gets processed through the community lens. A layoff at a logistic company is operational news. A layoff at Glossier is a story about whether the brand still values the people who build it. The community that built Glossier had expectations of it, and in 2022 those expectations were tested publicly, repeatedly in a very short window. This is not a failure of the community strategy. It is a consequence of it. The same asset that made Glossier grow faster than almost any direct-to-consumer brand in beauty history also made the brand more exposed to the perception of its most loyal customers when things got difficult. That is the strategic trade-off the community model carries, and it is worth understanding before you build a brand on the same foundation. Rhode launched on June 2022. 3 products, all under $30, and a clear, singular aesthetic that Hailey Bieber had been building on social media for years before the brand existed, what became known as a glazed donut skin. Now, every analysis of Rhode immediately leads to the celebrity angle. Hailey Bieber, the Instagram following, the cultural moment, and yes, all of that is real and relevant. But it is not the most interesting strategic decision Rhode made. Hailey Bieber wasn't selling a product, she was selling a daily practice, a ritual, a specific way of moving through your morning skincare routine that had a name, glazed donut skin, and a feeling, and a set of products designed to deliver it. The distinction matters because rituals don't require a community to sustain them. A community is social. It depends on the other people participating, other people validating, other people staying engaged. A ritual is personal. It lives in your bathroom, in your morning routine, in the 10 minutes before you leave the house. Rhode didn't need you to feel like you belonged to something. It needed you to believe in a routine. That is fundamentally different relationship between brand and consumer, and it carries fundamentally different structural risks. The launch results validated the positioning immediately. 3 products all sold out within 3 days. 440,000 person waitlist. The website crashed within minutes of launch. And the marketing spend behind all of this? Approximately 11% of revenue against an industry average of between 30 and 50%. Rhode spent roughly 1/5 of what most beauty brands spend on marketing, and generated results that the most brands with unlimited budgets couldn't replicate. That is not luck. That is what happens when the founder's organic reach functions as a perpetual marketing channel, and when the brand is built around a ritual compelling enough that the product sells itself to anyone who tries it. By the time e.l.f. Beauty acquired Rhode in May 2025 for up to $1 billion, the brand had generated $212 million in revenue in the 12 months ending March of that year. Direct to consumer only, 10 products. So, let's put them side by side, not as a product but as a strategic architectures. What it sold. Glossier, belonging, Rhode, ritual. Growth engine, Glossier, community plus peer referral, Rhode, founder reach plus scarcity. Mode, Glossier, loyal community, Rhode, cultural aspiration. Marketing model, Glossier, word of mouth, UGC, Rhode, organic founder content. Peak valuation, Glossier, $1.8 billion in 2021, Rhode, $1 billion acquisition in 2025. Time to $1 billion. Glossier, around 7 years, Rhode, 3 years. Primary vulnerability, Glossier, community expectations, Rhode, founder dependency. I want to spend a moment on the last row, the vulnerability column, because this is the one that most brand analysis skips over, and it's the one that matters most for anyone building a brand. Glossier's vulnerability is community expectations. When you build a brand on belonging, your community becomes a stakeholder, not legally, not financially, but emotionally. They feel ownership over what the brand does and who it becomes. That is enormously powerful on the way up, and it is genuinely difficult to manage when you need to make hard commercial decisions. Rhode's vulnerability is different, but equally real. The brand was built on Hailey Bieber's aesthetic credibility and cultural reach. The reach is not transferable. You cannot buy it, you cannot hire it. If the founder's cultural relevance shifts, and all cultural relevance shifts eventually, the brand's primary growth engine shifts with it. The e.l.f. acquisition is partly a bet that Rhode can survive that transition, that the products, the ritual, the brand architecture are strong enough to stand independently of their founder over time. That is an open question, and it is the most interesting strategic question in the beauty right now. So, what does all of this actually mean if you work in brand management? Here is the framework I take from these 2 case studies. Every brand answers, consciously or not, one foundational question, and it is this: what are we actually selling? And what happens when that becomes hard to deliver? Glossier answered, belonging, and belonging is hard to deliver when you are making decisions that prioritize commercial scale over community expectations. Not impossible, but it requires constant awareness that every operational decision is also a brand decision. Rhode answered, a ritual, and a ritual is hard to deliver when the person embodying that ritual becomes less culturally relevant, or when the brand scales into mass distribution and the ritual starts to feel ordinary rather than aspirational. Neither answer is wrong, both answers work. The job of the brand manager is not to pick the right answer. It is to understand what your answer commits you to, and to make every subsequent decision in alignment with it. Distribution is a brand decision. Pricing is a brand decision. Who you hire as a CEO is a brand decision. When you run a promotion is a brand decision. Everything that touches the customer's perception of what you are selling is a brand decision. Not just the packaging, not just the campaign. Glossier understood this when it was growing. The difficulty in 2022 was that the operational pressures of scaling a DTC business at the size created decisions that were in tension with the brand's core promise. That tension is visible in hindsight. The best brand managers learn to see it in advance. Glossier and Rhode are not a story about which brand is better. They are a story about 2 different answers to the same strategic question. and the consequences those answers carry. Glossier built a community and the community built the brand. That model created extraordinary loyalty, organic growth, and cultural relevance. It also created a stakeholder relationship that made hard commercial decisions publicly costly. Rhode built a ritual, and the ritual built the habit. The model created extraordinary efficiency, scarcity-driven demand, and 3-year path to the billion-dollar acquisition. It also created a structural dependency on a single founder's continued cultural relevance. Both of these things are true at the same time. This is what brand strategy actually looks like. Not a clean answer, but a deliberate choice with understood trade-off. If you work in beauty brand management or you are building toward it, this framework applies to every brand you will ever touch, not just the famous one. Ask the question, what are we actually selling? Then follow that answer into every decision the brand makes. That's the work. One question to leave you with, and I want to see your answer in the comments. Which model do you think is more sustainable long term? The community model or the ritual model? And if you can think of another beauty brand that's running one of these playbooks right now, name it below. I will respond. If this kind of brand analysis is useful to you, subscribe. All the sources used in this video are linked in the description. I will see you next time.